In a moment, I will introduce three terrific guests to briefly sweep through the last 5 decades and, importantly, look into the next. Let me try and set the scene a little bit for maybe those who don't know about 1972, partly because of my former job as UNEP's Director of Communications and its spokesperson. Between June 5 and June 16, 1972, in Stockholm, Sweden, well, this nation and this city was very much at the center of the first efforts to catalyze international environmental action. Led by the Canadian Maurice Strong, the UN Conference on the Human Environment echoed to the concern among some governments, scientists and activists that issues such as pollution of the air, the oceans, the seas and the land were going global. Acid rain from the burning of coal, nitrogen compounds that might warm the atmosphere, deforestation, and the thinning of the Earth's ozone layer from chemical attack, these were all on the radar. Basically, humanity was in an early awakening of the newfound destructive power of humans to change the fundamentals of all life on Earth, what we call today the Anthropocene. Sweden, the host, also hoped that environmental cooperation among nations might thaw the Cold War and the nuclear weapons crisis and boost the role of the United Nations. History indeed was made. Over 100 governments made a strong declaration on the need to act and agreed to set up the first UN body for the environment, the UN Environment Programme. And some months later, it was agreed to house UNEP in Nairobi, Kenya. That was special too. But as usual in the UN, there's always a bit of a backstory. Some rich countries, including the United States of America, Germany, the UK and France, had secretly worked quite against all this. A UN agency for the environment? My God, that might, heaven forbid, interfere with their economic development. Does that sound a bit familiar? Perhaps they were only too pleased that Kenya became UNEP's home in a post-colonial world. It looked very good politically. While housing UNEP far away in those days from the world's power centers until the dawn of the internet, trying to communicate and connect via a fragile Kenya telecom network to the rest of the world, that meant UNEP would be maybe well contained. Thus, it is to the credit of the executive directors that have led UNEP and its staff that this organization has achieved so much. Coordinating cutting-edge scientific assessments, for one. Think the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and also UNEP's Global Environmental Outlooks. Science that has inspired governments to agree to a range of global treaties on chemicals, hazardous waste, biological diversity, climate change, and mercury pollution. The list is long and it's legion. Expert bodies like the International Resource Panel, advancing concepts like the circular economy, the remarkable post-conflict assessment unit, founded after the war in the Balkans in the late 1990s, whose role will be indispensable for the recovery of the Ukraine and its people once the guns fall silent. And also getting to the heart of the real core problem with the groundbreaking Green Economy Initiative launched in 2008, providing powerful evidence that a 21st century economy everywhere will be stronger, generate more good jobs, and be longer lasting with proper investment flows into a healthy environment. And there's so much, much more to talk about over 50 years. But here's the rub. The world is today facing full-scale environmental emergencies. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says we have just 3 years to peak emissions, which is breathtaking, and 8 years to nearly halve them to have a chance of meeting the Paris Climate Agreement. Governments have agreed to reverse the rate and loss of biodiversity, but it didn't happen. European bats being among the few exceptions. We are still a throwaway world. Our global economy is still only around 9% circular. You can find many reasons for all this, but perhaps I can just suggest a couple. Today we understand the complexity of the drivers of damage and the levers for change, but we are saddled with very confused politics, quick fixes and short-termism whose thinking predates even 1972. And surely it smacks of schizophrenia that governments can commit to decarbonize their economies, and yet at the same time, governments can be round the back subsidizing and planning increases in fossil fuel production against renewable energy and against our interests. And what about the agency charged with trying to get the world on track? I remember standing in Montreal in Canada at a UN climate conference and reading that a hotel was being renovated for several tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. One hotel in one city in one developed country with a renovation budget in the range of what UNEP gets from governments worldwide. So 50 years on, governments meet again in Stockholm this June. It's time for governments to be truly courageous. Firstly, please stop using the environment as a short-term political football for party political gains. There's no time left for games. Tell the truth, make the tough decisions, and make them right now. Make the people aware that never-ending growth is a dead end if you want to hand over a functioning planet to future generations. We have all the money, we have all the technology, we have all the science, and we have all the creativity to get the job done. We're just missing some long-term, laser-focused political vision and a grown-up massive reality check. So end poverty, dear governments, and stop promoting endless consumption of stuff just to keep the voters happy. And please, for heaven's sake, seriously step up your support for UNEP. It really is derisory, given all they're asked to do by you as governments. So little that they get. These are two of the actions among many that are needed in 2022, actions that might just give nearly now 8 billion people on this planet a sense that politicians and political leaders are really on the ball and know how to act on our behalf.